The moment he saw it, the creature suddenly jumped into the water.
There exists a place whose very name conjures visions of desolation and finality, a realm so steeped in silence and salt that for centuries it has been known simply as the Dead Sea. Here, death seems to cling not only to the water, but to the very air itself, a place where, it is said, no bird dare linger and no fish can swim. The landscape is so harsh, so alien, that it has become the byword for barrenness, a liquid graveyard, brooding at the world's lowest point. But the silence of the Dead Sea is only an illusion. In recent years, teams of scientists and explorers have peered into the depths and along the crumbling cliffs with new eyes, uncovering hints of mysteries previously untouched. Yet, as new cracks open in the salt, and occasional freshwater streams appear where there should be none, as Ezekiel once proclaimed, destined to blossom again with life. Are we on the verge of confirming some of the Bible's most haunting prophecies? Has everything we thought we knew about this forgotten land been rewritten? Stay with us as we follow these clues, each one more tantalizing, each one inching us closer to the border between ruin and rebirth. The Dead Sea is beginning to speak. To dig beneath the Dead Sea's crust is not merely to handle mud and salt, but to disturb the layers of times almost forgotten. Every shovel of earth, every scan beneath the water, seems to reveal only half a truth still obscured by the passage of centuries. It starts with shapes glimpsed in the murky depths, arrangements of stone that some say resemble pyramids, others insist are natural formations, and still others believe might be the last remains of vanished settlements. No one can say for certain what or who built them, how they survived the endless onslaught of salt and heat, or why they lie so perfectly preserved until now. Could these be the foundations of the cities once condemned? Or are they the relics of a civilization we've not yet discovered? Along the crumbling shoreline and nestled within sea-blasted caves, the story grows richer, yet no less mysterious. Fragments of pottery emerge, bearing faint patterns and symbols lost to any known system. A handful of battered coins bearing the worn faces of Greek and Roman emperors, but also one or two with markings that no museum can fully catalog, raise new questions about who once traded along these wild, shifting banks. There are rumors among the diggers and geologists, tales that trickle out slow and quiet, of weapon heads with shapes unlike anything found in standard historical context, of glassy rocks fused by a heat that, some say, could only have come from events more catastrophic than human conquest, a fire so total it permanently etched itself into the land's memory. Occasionally, a team will stumble upon a passage or find a narrow opening into a cave where the air seems unnaturally cool and the stones whisper stories. Recent explorations have produced not only shards and artifacts, but the beginnings of inscriptions in Aramaic or mysterious runes. Some decipher the words as mundane lists or prayers, but others suggest deeper meanings, warnings, formulas, perhaps even prophecies. These are pieces of a riddle, and for every solution, a new question seems to rise in its place. And all this unfolds in a place where geologists have observed environmental changes that would once have been deemed improbable. Streams of clear water, born from shifting underground currents and the rare rainfall of recent years, have begun to wind their way toward the Dead Sea, creating pockets of transformation. Where only salt-crusted shores once stood, sometimes there are streaks of green algae, reeds, and in some scattered places, even the movement of small, silvery fish. With every new find, whether it's an object half disintegrated by salt, a stone scored with enigmatic marks, or a sudden sign of life in barren waters, scientists are forced to ask if the Dead Sea is offering something more than physical evidence. Are these discoveries the literal fulfillment of ancient prophecy, like Ezekiel's vision of revived waters teeming with living creatures? Or are they just a trick of geology and time, a coincidence that tempts believers and skeptics alike? While global fascination grows, so, too, do the divisions. Some scientists push back hard against any narrative of prophecy, citing natural evaporation cycles, unaudited claims, and the tendency to see patterns where none exist. Online, debates rage. Clips of sprouting reeds or squirming fish spark both joyous cries of miracle and lengthy debunking threads. Faith communities, meanwhile, wrestle with the line between longing for fulfillment and the responsible handling of hope. In this cacophony, the Dead Sea becomes a canvas for human projection, a place where belief and doubt collide as fiercely as tectonic plates. As information leaks out, public fascination grows. Social media buzzes with speculation. Journalists and adventurers arrive, hoping to catch glimpses of objects still half buried. Yet official announcements remain cautious, always pointing to the limits of what is truly known. Are we finding lost cities, proof of biblical cataclysms, or mere remnants of trade and pilgrimage from distant ages? No one can, and perhaps no one should answer just yet. For now, beneath the Dead Sea's blinding sun and shifting salt, the discoveries continue. Bit by bit, the puzzle grows, as if the land itself is inviting us to wonder, to seek, and to accept that some mysteries are made to unfold slowly and in shadow. So we await the next reveal, our curiosity alive and our imaginations racing, knowing that each fragment, each whisper from the deep, brings us closer to understanding not only the Dead Sea's hidden past, but how legend and reality, prophecy and science, are entwined in one of the most enigmatic places on Earth. If the Dead Sea is a reservoir of ancient memory, it is also a cauldron where legend and prophecy simmer together, refusing to part. For every artifact retrieved a coin, a weathered weapon head, a line of enigmatic script, there comes a question that is at once familiar and unsettling. Can the evidence beneath these salty layers possibly align with the most mysterious verses of Holy Writ? Some researchers, sifting through glassy ash and melted stone, cannot help but wonder, are these the fingerprints of Sodom and Gomorrah? The Bible describes the infamous valley as being consumed by fire and brimstone, a fate that echoes eerily in the mineral tracings and strange fused rock found near the water's edge. Scholars debate, does ancient catastrophe meet literal prophecy here, or are we simply seeing the natural violence that marks any shifting earth? Other discoveries seem almost tailor-made to stir spiritual excitement. Those strange stone arrangements, half submerged and inscrutable, are they the last whispers of a civilization wiped away in a single night? Even the ancient coins and spellbound scripts could, some say, hint at trade or rituals for protection, a frantic attempt by lost peoples to claim favor in a world teetering on the edge of disaster. But the Dead Sea's prophetic allure is not merely anchored in stories of ruin. The words of Ezekiel have haunted believers and dreamers for centuries. Wherever the river flows, everything will live. In recent years, the emergence of freshwater springs so improbable in such a salty expanse and the return of algae and fish have sparked quiet speculation. Are these fulfilling the old vision, or just the latest twist in nature's unpredictable story? Recent years have seen a surge of environmental studies that dive beneath the obvious plant life and visible creatures. Geneticists have sequenced salt-loving microbes extremophiles whose DNA tells a story of millennia-old adaptation. Some strains are previously unknown to science, with unusual proteins possibly holding keys to both medicine and biosphere engineering. From orbit, satellites now track subtle changes. Seasonal colors swirled by currents, minor upticks in animal movement, and even rare localized electron bursts. Each data point, when mapped onto the ancient vision of Ezekiel, brings a startling possibility. Prophecy, perhaps, is not a one-time event, but a long evolution, unfolding even at the tiniest scale. Scientists remain skeptical, pointing to climate cycles and geological chance. Yet, among the faithful, every new sign of life conjures up the hope of renewal, of a landscape once marked for death, now reborn by miracle and mercy. Suddenly, ancient prophecy isn't dust and metaphor. It's a living possibility, playing out in faint green streaks along a legendary shore. It's not just the Jewish scriptures, either. Throughout religious history, the Dead Sea has been invoked in texts from neighboring faiths, a place for judgment and pilgrimage, sometimes for retribution, sometimes for redemption. Is this convergence coincidence, or is it another hint that the mysteries of this land are far from finished? Faith leaders across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam periodically convene near the Dead Sea's shifting edges. Some debate the meaning of these fresh waters in light of Jewish messianic expectations, while others revisit Quranic references to lands made barren, brought to life at the end of days. Interfaith roundtables, once fractious, now acknowledge that the land's changes are a call to humility, a rare cause for dialogue instead of dispute. Could this be not only the fulfillment of ancient texts, but a stage set for reconciliation in one of the world's most fractured landscapes? Of course, not every clue fits so neatly. For each theory tying objects to biblical catastrophe or heavenly promise, there is a counterargument from archaeologists, linguists, and even open-minded theologians. Some inscriptions remain resolutely undeciphered. Some structures offer no clear origin, and some relics, those coins with unknown faces, those shards bearing untranslatable marks, persist as silent rebukes to all our certainties. Maybe this is the true lesson of the Dead Sea, that prophecy is less about answers than about invitation, less a map to a determined future than a challenge to keep seeking, questioning, listening. The salt preserves, but it also conceals. And so each discovery, each anomaly, each tentative step into a cave is also a step deeper into the long dialogue between faith and reason, between what the land permits and what the heart yearns to know. As the team pack up their finds and leave the shimmering water behind, one thing remains: the pulse of possibility beneath a surface that has been called dead for thousands of years. Perhaps we are closer than ever to knowing what truly happened here, and perhaps that knowledge will unsettle more than it confirms. For now, the Dead Sea's mysteries and the prophecies attached to it remain open, waiting for another dawn, another revelation, at the edge of faith, science, and the eternal human hunger for stories that outlast time itself. As light fades over the Dead Sea, it becomes clear that this landscape is not simply a relic of the past, but a living, shifting mirror for humanity itself. The more scientists and seekers attempt to extract its secrets, the more the place reveals its paradoxes. It is a graveyard and a garden, silence and prophecy, a place haunted by destruction and haunted all over again by impossible hope. Every discovery, each strange inscription, every fragment of pottery, each sign of revived life in salty water, reminds us that dead is always a relative term. Just as ancient fires once turned earth to glass, so now quiet springs bring fresh water through cracks no eye had ever noticed. It's as if the land itself is trying to tell us, nothing is truly finished, neither in nature nor in faith. The ongoing change has not gone unnoticed. Environmentalists warn that the Dead Sea's shrinking, the new sinkholes and shifting sands, are urgent calls for stewardship. Yet for the spiritually alert, Every ripple in the water, every drift of new greenery, is another echo of long-awaited renewal, a tiptoe of prophecy on the edge of fulfillment. Is this return of life a byproduct of modern interventions? Or could these gentle signs really be the first hints of a transformation once catalogued only in sacred words and wild visions? Pilgrims and travelers walk the winding paths above the shore, some clutching old texts, others only their imaginations. They point toward the glistening crust, toward the distant outline of Jericho, or the hills where ancient prophets are said to have walked. To stand at this margin is to sense that you, too, are a witness somewhere between history and the yet-to-occur, between proof and faith, between human limitation and what eternity might, if just for a heartbeat, reveal. All this, the blending of ruin and resurrection, warning and promise, raises questions that will not go away. What are we truly searching for in these sun-bleached rocks and shadowed caverns? Is it scientific knowledge for its own sake, the hope of vindicating holy stories long dismissed as fable, or simply the reassurance that loss can turn to marvel, that endings are not always as final as they seem? Perhaps, more than a destination, the Dead Sea offers us a way of seeing. In its extreme conditions, it amplifies every contradiction of the human experience. Here, memory lingers in stone, and prophecy soaks into the earth itself. Here, hope and disappointment share a shoreline. Belief and skepticism are forced to share water. And here, the future, like the ancient rivers of prophecy, always seems on the verge of breaking through. Even now, with every expedition, every glint of artifact from the mud, the invitation is renewed to look deeper, to hold the opposites in tension without rushing for neat conclusions. The Dead Sea's true lesson may not lie in a single artifact or a solved riddle, but in the very act of searching, of loving the questions, of walking the border between despair and hope, of living in a world where resurrection often begins in the places we are least likely to expect. So, as the sun disappears behind red hills and evening descends on the salt-bright valley, the Dead Sea holds fast to its mysteries. But it also, through every shift and every crack, whispers the oldest truth, that even in a land called dead, life and meaning are always rising, unexpected, untamed, and ever unfinished. In the flickering twilight, as the air grows thick with salt and stories, the Dead Sea becomes more than a location on a map. It becomes a question, a challenge, and maybe even a mirror for every person willing to look closely. What have we really gained from digging up its shores, deciphering its ancient scripts, and cataloging its half-buried treasures? The answer, like the Dead Sea itself, is multi-layered. Each artifact, each enigmatic shift in the land, deepens our connection not just to distant peoples, but to the driving questions that shape all of history. Why do we remember? What are we truly seeking when we search for traces of the sacred in soil and stone? These are not new obsessions. Humans have always journeyed to the edges, to deserts, to ruins, to places branded dead or forsaken, in search of answers and the hope of resurrection. Perhaps what draws us to the Dead Sea, more than its scientific allure or spiritual gravity, is its role as a living metaphor, a site where endings and beginnings blur, where devastation can be the prelude to something inexplicably alive. The recent finds structures that defy easy explanation, artifacts that seem to straddle realities, flares of life pulsing in brine, do not offer completion. Instead, they sharpen our sense that the Dead Sea is an unfolding riddle. Some will see in the discoveries echoes of prophecy fulfilled, others only traces of forgotten human labor and natural wonder. Both are right, and neither tells the whole story. Perhaps, if prophecy is real, it is written not just in ancient words, but in the earth's enduring capacity for surprise. Maybe the greatest fulfillment of Ezekiel's vision is not just fish in new waters, but a new willingness to find hope, where the world once wrote, "no hope." Maybe Sodom's ashes and the anonymous coins are less about what was lost and more about what is always there to be found. Renewal within disaster, meaning re-emerging from mystery.